So the organizers, I think, invited me out here tonight to explain how one could become a 128-pound sumo wrestler if one wanted. And I have a particular insight into this, as I think this photo may cue you in. That's me, sunk in man fat. This happens to be Yahoo's most viewed image, one of them from last year. And the story of how I ended up in the ring with Big T stretches back about 5 years ago to when I was a data entry clerk at Pacific Bell. And I have to admit that I had expected or wanted more from life. I wanted adventure and excitement, and data entry is not that. And the reason I wanted these things is because as a kid, my dad had always told me bedtime stories about a character that he invented named Ipsky Pipsky. And Ipsky Pipsky was this wonderful, marvelous young man who could do anything I wanted him to on any given night. He could be an astronaut and blast into space. He could be a fireman, rush into houses and save a whole family. It was always very exciting. And my dad would always end the stories by saying, one day, you'll be just like Ipsky Pipsky. But Ipsky Pipsky was never a data entry clerk, not once. And I realized that I had basically fallen into a rut and I needed to get out of it. So I drove into the Mojave to take some time off, and I pulled into a diner for dinner one night, and I see this flyer that says, U.S. National Arm Wrestling Championship. Anybody can enter. And two things occurred to me. The first was, I could be a championship arm wrestler and just never knew it because I haven't tried it. I mean, how could I know without trying? And the second thing is, this is definitely something that Ipsky Pipsky would do. So a couple weeks later, I went back to the Mojave, and I entered the championship. And, I realized that I was in way over my head immediately because I was going to be up against guys like this. So I promptly lost. I had never arm wrestled in my life. It was a double elimination event. I lost both my matches. And I kind of retreated to the back of the hall where it was held. But amazingly, at the end of the competition, when they announced the winners, they called me to the stage and told me that I had placed 4th in the U.S. So when I got to the stage, I was like, what's going on? Turns out there were only 3 other competitors in the lightweight division. So I was 4th out of 4. It turns out that made me an alternate for the U.S. National Arm Wrestling team. And numbers 2 and 3 couldn't go to the World Championship. They invited me. I never won a match in my life. But I was very excited. I spent months and months training. I lifted weights with my right arm, only with my right arm, so I get huge, because I was only qualified with my right arm. And I showed up in Poland, in the middle of winter, in northern Poland, as part of Team USA, and here I am in the middle. This is actually a Reuters photograph of the team at the time. I dyed my hair dark there to be more menacing. But, I noticed a few things very quickly when I showed up at the gym where the World Championships was being held. The first thing I noticed was a number of Russians with missing legs. And they were kind of clutching around the floor of the gymnasium, and one of my teammates leaned over to me and explained that in Russia, arm wrestling is a profession, and the state will give you a house, they'll give you a car. And there was a rumor that for some of the guys who were getting older and starting to lose, they had decided to willingly amputate a leg so that they could compete in a lower weight class and have a second career to keep their house. So the team captain comes up to me and says, do you want the good news or the bad news? I said, give me the good news, I need some right now. He goes, well, the guy you're competing against has 2 legs. That's the good news. The bad news is that he's known as the Russian Ripper, and he's known for breaking arms. So the advice he gave me was, don't let your body get away from your arm. I mean, I had trained, but I hadn't trained that hard. So I get up there, and of course, I lose. Here I am losing, miserably. I mean, I tried my best. It wasn't like I wasn't trying, but this was the Russian Ripper. It was ridiculous. But despite having never won a competitive arm wrestling match, I ended up 17th in the world. Out of 18. And the 18th guy didn't show up. But my point is that simply by showing up, I beat somebody. I beat the 18th guy. And that kind of opened up the horizons for me. Opened up the possibilities of my life. But at the same time, I realized that arm wrestling wasn't really going to be a career for me because, I couldn't hope to ever do any better than I did. And I didn't want to hang around past my prime like Michael Jordan and go out with a whimper. So I decided to kind of hang up my arm warmer and go on to new horizons because there are plenty of them. For instance, one of the things I did soon thereafter was enter the skijoring nationals. And skijoring is like water skiing behind a horse in the snow. it's thrilling, and this is in Wyoming, Montana, Red Lodge, Montana, and they have a circuit. It's very exciting. You should all consider trying it at least once. And one of the next things I did, and this was one of my favorite, was I entered the Golden Shrimp. And I don't know if any of you have heard of that, but the Golden Shrimp is the World Backwards Running Championship. This is actually the start. Everybody's heading towards us. And Golden Shrimp, right? Because shrimp swim backwards. And I did very well in this one. There were over 100 people, and I ended up placing 19th out of the whole field, and I won a kilogram of ham. Which, this is actually a source of a lot of conflict in my marriage right now, because I still have it in my refrigerator, and my wife says it's a festering ball of processed swine, and I say it's a symbol of everything I've achieved. And she wants to throw it out, I want to keep it, and so what I've decided to do, this is a compromise, is I'm going to encase it in a brick of clear resin and use it as a paperweight or as a doorstop. The thing is, I don't know anything about resin, so if anybody here has any insight to it, see me afterwards and kind of cue me in. But anyway, so things in my life had kind of really opened up, and I felt really good about where I was, but there was still one nagging issue, which is that my wife, Tara, and I had always planned on having a family, and yet I didn't really feel like running backwards around the world and skijoring were compatible with family life. And there was another more profound issue, which is that for me, a dad has always been something very big. Like my dad, who's out here in the audience somewhere tonight, is 6'4". You may see him later. Say hi. My stepdad is 6'2", and I'm clearly not that big. I'm quite small, actually. And so I felt like I needed to kind of address this issue. And it happened that around this time, I stumbled across what I felt was an ideal medium, an ideal venue for exploring the idea of bigness, which was the U.S. Sumo Open. Now, it turns out that Los Angeles is an epicenter of sumo. I don't know if anybody knew that, but there is actually, the California Sumo Association runs, every Sunday they run a training session out in Santa Monica. So I started going out for it, and I met the coach, whose name was Svetoslav Binev, a Bulgarian guy, very cool guy. And Svet actually holds the dual distinction of not only being the Bulgarian national sumo champ, he's also the Bulgarian national handball champion. And he was awarded twice the Bulgarian Most Intelligent Sportsman Award, which I think is a very interesting award, and I think Svet deserves it because it takes a particular intelligence to combine sumo and handball. But Svet had, I think, also reached the peak of what he was able to do in Bulgaria. I mean, he was obviously a very successful athlete, and so he was using the Schwarzenegger model by coming to Los Angeles and hoping to use sumo as a springboard, like a very sturdy springboard, into acting and into politics. And so when I met him, like the possibilities of his life were really opening up as much as mine were, and so we really kind of bonded over that. And he started to kind of induct me into the secrets of sumo and the technique of sumo. So it turns out that there are 70 official sumo moves, exactly 70. And one of them can be used by a very small man against an opponent much larger. Essentially what it is at the start, you go around behind your opponent and you get a very particular grip on the diaper, on the mawashi, and you torque them over your hip. You use leverage to roll them and trip them over your leg. And Svet explained to me that it's not just about weight. It's about understanding weight. It's about the dynamics of weight. It's about the combined weight in the ring. And so I had cause to be optimistic when I decided to enter the U.S. Sumo Open. And Svet told me that I was in good shape, that I actually had a chance. But I realized quite quickly that I was up against some serious competition. This is who I'm talking about. Marcus Barber, a 525-pound opera singer from San Bernardino. So my optimism started to kind of decline, and it wasn't helped by the fact that I was wearing the diaper for the mawashi for the first time with nothing underneath. I was basically kind of bare butt, and it was a sellout crowd at this hotel in downtown Los Angeles. It was 750 people who were going to see my ass, and so I was terrified that the thing was going to fall off. I was sure that it was going to fall off, and so I tied it really tight, and it was crushing my nuts and making me nauseous. But I didn't want to fidget with it in front of 700 people, so I just kind of had to bear it. And so I was nauseous, I was terrified, and then the announcer announced the match. And on the left side of the ring, we have Marcus Barber at 525 pounds. And Barber kind of... And on the other side of the ring, we have Joshua Davis, the lightest man ever sumo at the US Open. And I trot out. I pop in my mouth guard, and everybody falls totally silent. And the paramedics in the corner stand up. But no, very quickly the atmosphere changed. Because I think people could, they could see that I was a skinny man. But they could also sense that the spirit of a much fatter man was emanating from me. So that when I ground my left fist into the ground, and I ground my right fist in, and I stared right through Barber, people had a serious question about what was going to happen. And what did happen was that when the ref shouted, "Haikyo!" which is go, I slammed into him, and his fat rippled all the way across his body, slammed back at me. I dodged him left, and I got into the position. I mean, I was there. I had made it. It was unbelievable. I want to show you. Here it is. Do you see this? I have the advantage. Basically, all that's going to happen now is, you see how he's leaning over. I'm much more settled. I'm going to basically pull him just a little, just a tiny tug, and he's going to collapse on the ground. Okay, here it is. It's not over. It's not over. I am in the power position here. It may not look like it, but I have the inside grip. You see that? This is very important in sumo. I know you guys don't know this because you don't know sumo, but this is the inside grip. Technically, I have the advantage here, okay? Technically, I'm in the power position. This is not the power position. Here is called the wet fish, which is it's like a shake that you use it when you are stuck on someone's stomach. This happens to be one of the most humiliating moments in my life. But let's just move on. I don't want to look at this anymore. I'm going to show you the whole thing so you can appreciate it. It seems ridiculous, I know, but I had trained for most of a year to be ready for this. So I sulked off into a corner and I fidgeted with my mawashi because now I had the biggest wedgie anyone has ever. And this little boy, this 10-year-old boy, comes up to me with his dad, and the boy sticks out his program for the event and asks for my autograph. And I think, somebody's put him up to this, this is a joke. And I look around and I say, "Why do you want my autograph?" I just got humiliated in front of everybody. And he kind of looks down at his shoes. He can't say anything. His dad steps in for him and he says, "My son wants your autograph because you had the most fighting spirit. You should have given up, but you didn't, and that meant a lot to my son." And he explained that his son had been picked on at school by people who were bigger than him, and for the son to see a little guy in the ring with a big guy really meant a lot to me. And I realized that at that point, though I had lost that match, I actually was becoming a much bigger person, a much fatter man on the inside. And so I'm happy to announce to all of you tonight that my wife and I are expecting a little baby in November. She's here tonight, and I'm going to tell the little one a lifetime of sumo wrestling ipsy-tipsy stories. Thank you very much.